Good morning, everyone. Today's daf and daf yomi is daf nun hey 55 in Masechet Nazir. And we're going to start the top word on page, even though we read some of this yesterday. We'll go through it quickly. But is it me? Am I frozen? You guys are good, right? Can see me? Okay. So good morning. So today's daf is daf nun hey 55. And I'm going to catch up because I know we did it on Shabbos yesterday, so I apologize. Hopefully we caught up. But the Mishnah had some very interesting cases. And the Mishnah basically had two types of cases, which we're going to split into more subgroups because we like to do that. And one group were if person is a Mitzorah, a person is a Nazir, if they become Tamei Mate, then that cancels their Nizirut. Right? They have to stop their Nazirut. They have to go get sprinkled on Shlishi and Shvi'i. They have to bring they cut their hair and bring a special karban for Nazir Tamei, and then they start all over again. That was one case. Then we said there are cases of Tum'ah in which you don't cancel your Nazirut, where you basically can continue along with your Nazirut. You pause it for the time that you're Tamei, let's say it's 7 days, and then on the 8th day, you resume your count. Right? That was the second case. And we talked about those yesterday, things like a Revi'at Dam or a small amount of bones in an Ohel, things that were in between. They weren't so severe, but they were still Tamei. But then we introduced a third concept. And the third concept, before we get to, well, I'm going to add the third concept, but we'll get to it actually later today. The third concept in the Mishnah yesterday was there are some tumot that maybe don't even cancel Nazirut at all, and you can even count while you're Tamei. Right. So, for example, tuma of a mitzora or tuma of a zav. That's an easy case. Right. Tuma of a zav, a person sees an emission, they become tamei for 7 days, but that has nothing to do with their nizirut. And during those 7 days, they can keep counting, actually, even though they're tamei, and the nizirut just keeps going. Okay. That was what we said in the Mishnah. Now, yesterday, one of the cases in the Mishnah was tumat eretz ha'amim. If you go into the lands outside of Eretz Yisrael, there's a gzera of tumah. And we wondered yesterday, what's the reason for that gzera? So one explanation was mishum gusha, because you're going to touch the dirt of the Eretz Hamim, and the dirt is full of dead people, bones, right? And therefore the dirt, the air on top of it, the ohel, everything is tamei. And the other explanation was avir, that they just made a takana, they made a gzera that you're not supposed to go into those places. And so even if you're not touching anything or not in the airspace, which we saw yesterday, might be possible through going through an airplane or what we called a flying box, right? That might be a reason not to be tamei if it's because of touching it, but you would be tamei if it's just the airspace or the presence in Eretz Ha'amim. So it says the Gemara on the top of Daf Nun Hey Amud Aleph, the first word is Leima Ketanoi. Seems like this is a machloket Tanaim, you can see. It says in a Braita, now we're quoting a Braita, Hanichnas the Eretz Ha'amim. Let's say you go into a foreign land. B'sheidat tevo migdal. These are all words for boxes and towers. You know, you go in a container, right? You're carried in, let's say. So then Rebbe says you're tamei, because even though you're inside a box, inside the ohel, basically that's protecting you, you're in Iraq, so you're tamei. And Rebbe Yehuda is mitaher. So it seems like this would be the machloket. My love, Rebbe Savar Mishum Avira. That the reason that we go Gozer Tuma and Eretz Hamim is because of the airspace. And so even if you're in a box, you're in the presence of that country or that space. And so you're Tamei. And Rabbi Yehuda Savar Mishum Gusha. Rabbi Yehuda says it's because of touching things. And since you're not touching anything, and you're not even in an ohel, you're not even in the space of the Eretz Hamim because you're in your own airplane, you're not Tamei. Says Marlo, that's not a proof. It might not be the case. The Kuli Alma could be that everybody agrees Mishum Gusha. Everybody agrees that the reason you are tamei is because you're touching dirt or touching something that is tamei. But Mar Savar, the question is, if you go inside a box, are you considered to be in the airspace of the Tumah? Because one opinion of Rebbe is, Rebbe Yossi Rebbe Yehuda, is Ohel Zaruk Shmei Ohel, that being inside an Ohel that is flying, or being thrown or being carried in this case, right? They didn't really conceive of airplanes, but they had people carrying this box, right? Like the Queen of Sheba, right? They were being carried along. So that's considered to be an ohel. And therefore you're in your own separate space. You're not in the space of the Eretz Ha'amim, and therefore you're tahar. And Mar Savar and Rebbe, who says you're tamei, holds lo shmei ohel, would hold that's not an ohel. So that seems like a good explanation. The problem is the following Braita, Vatanya, this I'm reading it like the Mefarish does, as like Tosas does, which is a question. It says in a Braita, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda clearly says, Teva shehi mele'a kelim. If you got a box, we said yesterday, our Amazon box full of toys, full of makeup in that case. The zarka pnei hametz ba'ohel. Let's take out the word ba'ohel. You throw it in front of over a dead body. So then tme'ah, even though it's in its own box, right, and it's its own ohel, since you're throwing it, it loses its name, it loses its presence of an ohel, and therefore it's tamei. So ma'ita munacha Torah, but if it was sitting on the ground, it would be tahar. So that implies that even according to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, an ohel zaruk is not an ohel. So an ohel that you're in, a box that you're being carried in, is not protect you. And so that can't explain why Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda says you're not tamei if you're in a box. Really, you go the opposite way. Everybody is of the opinion that the reason you're tamei if you go into Eretz Amim is because the airspace, because the presence in that place. Why would they argue about whether if you're in a box you're tamei? Because Marsavar Mishkivan Shchicha, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda says this is a very unusual case, right? Who travels in a closed box? Again, not, we're going to see in a second, it's not an airplane, because an airplane is common to travel in, right? It's a box. Who travels in a box? Remember they said a Sarah, I guess, went in the box, right? Who travels in the box? It's very unusual. So because of that, Lo Gazru Be'Rabbanan, the Rabbanan said you don't have to be Gozer Tumah in such a circumstance. Umar Savar and Rebbe, who says you are Tamei, would hold Afa Gavdelo Shchicha Gazru Be'Rabbanan, that even though it's a very unusual thing, the Rabbanan said the fact that you're in the Eretz HaAmim, you're in the airspace, in the country of Iraq, let's say in this case, you're Tamei. Says Tanya, and in fact, we have a Braita which supports that assumption that it has to do with reasonability or frequency. The Braita says halfway down of Nun Hey Amud Aleph, Hanichnas la'eretz ha'amim b'sheidat teva u'migdal. If you go into a foreign country in a box, you're tahor. This must be Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. But if you do it in a normal way of travel, meaning bikaron, just like some kind of boat. I don't know how you translate karon, but some kind of boat. No, that's what I said the last one. Ubisvina, which of course is another word for boat. Ubi Iskaria, which I translated yesterday as a cruise ship, but Rashi says refers to a masted ship. You have the Iskaria is a big. I don't know what word. I'm not very good at ships, but some very large ship. In all those cases, you're tamei, because if you're sailing down the Tigris River in one of these boats, you're in Eretz Ha'amim, and that's a normal way to travel. So even though it's an ohel essentially, and it's an ohel that's moving, so it's essentially an ohel zaruk, the boat's moving. You wouldn't be tamei if, this is one way to read it, if it was a box, because that's an unusual way to travel. But if it's going in a boat or a ship, which is normal, then they made a gzera that you are tamei, because even though you're in your own ohel, you're enclosed in this boat or this airplane or whatever it might be, it doesn't matter, because you're in the airspace, you're in the sovereign space of Iraq, let's call it, even the Gemara doesn't use that term, and therefore you're tamei. Continues the Gemara, and some people say that the other explanation for why you would be or wouldn't be tamei if you're in this box in Eretz HaAmim is because Hacha Shema Yotzi Rosho Virubo L'Shampli. The question is not in the box. Maybe the box actually is fine. In the box, you're in your own ohel, so you're totally protected from the tumah of the land. But the question is, we're worried that you're not going to stay in your box. Right? A lot of people leave their box. And if you leave your box, you'll be tamei. So the question was, should we gozer tumah when you're in the box because you might leave the box? And Tanya, and that is supported by the following Braita, where Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Hanichnas la'eretz ha'amim, if you go into a foreign land, b'sheidat teva u'migdal, in a box, you're tahor, ad sheyotzi l'sham rosho o rubo, until you stick out your head or most of your body. But so as long as you don't stick anything out, you're tahar, according to Rabbi Yehuda. If you do, you're tamei. But the problem is, now the question is, what about the boat? Because the simplest explanation is that the boat, everyone sticks their head over the side of the boat. I mean, that's just assumed, right? No one, you've ever been on a boat and not stuck your head over the side, right? So therefore the boat is basically your tamei, because we're sure you're going to do it. So it's a gzera, but it's a gzera based on the assumption that there's no question that you're going to stick part of your body outside of your ohel. You're going to leave the boat, quote unquote, by sticking something over the edge, and therefore you'll for sure become exposed to Eretz Ha'amim, and you'll be Tameh. So it has nothing to do, in this case, with whether it's not a machloket, Gusha or Avir. Everyone agrees with Avir, we're saying, but the machloket is whether an ohel that protects you even if we're worried you're going to stick your body parts out of that ohel. And that's the 2 dots. So we're 5 lines from the bottom, and we're done for now with Tumat Eretz Ha'amim. The Mishnah, again, back to our Mishnah. Okay, this now gets a little complicated, but everyone's sure wide awake Sunday morning, and we can handle complexity. So the Mishnah said, and we quote the words now, umatchil umonem miyad. Okay, so again, the case here is there's 2 kinds of tuma. One is tumat mate that cancels your nazirut. You say I'm going to be a nazir, you become tameh with touch a dead body directly. You're tameh. 7 days you got to wait till you come tahar. On the 8th day, you bring a karban. You shave your head, shave all your body hair. You bring a karban. That's a karban of nazirut tumah, and then you start all over again, right? So that's simple, or that's based on the pasuk. Then the second case, which was yesterday's Mishnah, was tumat mate, which is not cancel your nazirut. For example, a very small amount of bones in an ohel, or a revi'it of dam, or you touched something that touched a mate, so it's indirect. In all those cases, well, not the last one, but in the other cases, you are tameh for 7 days, it's tumat mate, but it doesn't cancel your nazirut. So you basically pause your nazirut for 7 days. At the end of 7 days, you don't bring a karban because you don't have to do nazirut tumah. And then says the Mishnah, this is the quote, umatchil, you start and you count right away. We assumed yesterday I meant on the 8th day. Says Rav Chisda, I just want to be very clear with you. Lo shanu ela b'nazirit mu'etet. When we say that you have to pause your count during those days and that you resume after you become tahar, that's only true if your nazirut was only 30 days or less than, let's say, less than 37 days, let's just say. A small amount of nazirut, right? Because remember that we didn't raise this issue yet, but I'm going to bring it now, which is that we said earlier that in order to finish your nazirut, you need a minimum of 30 days let's just say you need a minimum of 30 days to grow your hair, right? If you didn't grow your hair for 30 days, you have to count those 30 days, even if you don't have that many days left in your nazirut. Now, if you didn't have to cut your hair, of course, there's no reason why you don't have the 30 days. But it says Rav Chisda, Lo shanu ela b'nazirit mu'etet. This is only true that you don't count those middle days when you're tameh if your nazirut was 30 days. So you did 10 days, you became tameh, you paused for 7 days, you finish your 20 more days. Aval b'nazirut miruba. Let's say you said, I want to be a nazir for 100 days. And 30 days pass, and then you become tameh. And then you're tameh for 7 days, and then you keep counting. Says Rav Chisda, you don't have to count 70 more days. You can count the middle days. Those 7 days will count for your nazirut. B'nazirut miruba, mislak nami salkin alei. The days count for you. Because the halacha is only, you have to have 30 days of tahara. And so if you are a nazir for 30 days and you're tameh mate for 7 of them, you can't count those. But if you're a nazir for 100 days and you're tameh mate for 7 of them, you can count those, which is a huge chiddush. Our Mishnah didn't say anything like that. So that is the statement of Rav Chisda. Ask the Gemara, Mativ Rav Sharbia. Sharbia said, I got big problems with you, Rav Chisda. Because if you read our Mishnah, now we're quoting the Mishnah, it says, Matchil umonem miyad, right? It doesn't actually say this, but this is a rearrangement of the words in the Mishnah, that after you become tahar, you start and you count right away, ve'ein mivatel behenet hakodmin, and it doesn't cancel the earlier days. Our Mishnah said the opposite way. You don't cancel the earlier days, and then you count right away. But anyways, it doesn't matter. It's the same words. So now, what's the case that the Mishnah is saying that you count right away after your nazirut, after your tameh, and you don't cancel the earlier days? B'mai. What was your nazirut that we're referring to? Ilema b'nazirut mu'etet. If we're talking about a nazirut mu'etet, right, meaning a nazirut of 30 days, what do you say? Now we're referring, remember, the Mishnah had a lot of cases. One was tumat mate, but the other case in the Mishnah was tumah of tzarat, right? And remember that when mitzora, what happens with the mitzora? They are muskar for 7 days. At the end of 7 days, what does the mitzora have to do? They cut off all their hair. right? And then they count and they wait. So the Mishnah said at the end of our Mishnah of Emet Amru that a Mitzorah Muskar, you can count, well, not Mitzorah Muskar, but the first part of the Mishnah, sorry. It said by Mitzorah, after they become Tahar from their Tzorat, right? You resume counting right away. Now, the problem is that if you're talking about a Nazir who only committed to 30 days, which is what Rav Chisda wants to say, then the problem is if you cut your hair after 10 days, then you only have 20 days left to grow your hair, right? And remember, every Nazir needs a minimum of 30 days of hair growth. So that Nazir would have to wait 30 days anyways, meaning their earlier days wouldn't count. They did 10 days. They became a Tzorat. They then finished their Tzorat. The Mishnah says start counting right away, but you can't start counting right away because you only have 20 days left of your Nazirut and you need 30 days to grow your hair. So in that case, they would have to actually not count right away. They'd have to wait 10 days of growth, hair growth, and then start counting their 20 days, right? Whatever order, but they'd have to count 30 days. So it must be referring to, let me read the words inside. If you're talking about a minimum, meaning a 30-day Nazirut, or really less than 37 days, you would be short days of growing your hair. Ella, turn the page, it must be that our Mishnah itself is referring to a Nazirut Miruba, where you said, I'm going to be a Nazir for 100 days, right? And then you became a Mitzorah in the middle, let's say, right? And the Mishnah says, do your Mitzorah, your Tameh for 7 days or 14 days, and at the end of that, you go back and you keep counting, right? The Katani, Matchil Umonem Miyad, which when we say keep counting, the implication is that you didn't count while you were Tameh. And Rav Chisda just said that if you have a Nazirut Miruba, you can count while you're Tameh. You can count those 14 days. So our Mishnah is clear, it seems to be arguing with Rav Chisda. Our Mishnah seems to be saying that even when you say I'm a Nazir for 100 days and you become Tameh with Tzorat on day 20, let's say, right? That at the end of your days of Tahara, you resume counting, but you didn't count when you were Tameh. And according to Rav Chisda, if you're a Nazirut Miruba, 100-day Nazirut, you count when you're Tameh. So our Mishnah seems to contradict Rav Chisda. Read the inside now. Elav b'Nazirut Miruba. We must be referring to a Nazirut that's more than 30 days. And it says, Katani matchil umonem miyad. And we think matchil means you start counting, meaning you weren't counting while you were Tameh. So that seems to be a very big problem for Chisda. Again, it's a contradiction. If you're talking about Nazirut mu'etet, a 30-day Nazirut, then the fact is that if you became a Mitzorah after 10 days, you can't resume counting once you're finished because you need 30 days of Gidul Seyar. So it must be referring to where there's more than left, right? But if there's more than 30 days left, Rav Chisda said you can count even when you're Tameh. And our Mishnah says you start counting when you become Tahar. So how does Rav Chisda explain that? This was the question of Rav Sharbia. Says the Gemara, who motifla? Rav Sharbia asked this question in the Beit Midrash. And then as he immediately thought of the answer himself. He thought of the answer and he answered it himself. That in fact, you can have a middle category. And what's the middle category? A Nazirut bat chamishim yom. We could be talking about a Nazirut that's miruba, but not very miruba, right? It's a Nazirut of 50 days, meaning, what happened? The Yativ, I'm reading inside now, the Yativ Esrin. You said, I want to be a Nazir for 50 days, and you were a Nazir for 20 days. How many do you have?
Wait, what? 30.
30, thank you. You said, I'm going to be a Nazir for 50 days. You did 20 days, you have 30 left, and you became a Mitzorah, okay? You become a Mitzorah, and then, let's say, and it doesn't really matter how many days, you become a Mitzorah, and you're Tameh for 7 days or 14 days, right? At the end of that time, you cut off all your hair, and then you could resume counting Nazirut right away, meaning you don't cancel. You don't have to go back and do 50 more days. But the point then is you can't count the time in between. The reason you can't count the time in between is you need 30 days to grow your hair, right? So the days that you were Tameh can't count. And they can't count not because of Rav Chisda's wrong. They can't count because technically you need 30 days. Had you been a Mitzorah, let's say, had you been a Nazir, say, for 7 days, and you did 20, so you had 50 left, then you can count those 14 days of Tumah. You have more than 30 at the end. But because you only had exactly 30 days left, you have to pause your counting in order to leave 30 days. That's not because Rav Chisda is wrong. It's because you have this Nazirut Miruba that has 30 days. So read it inside. Yativ Esrin, line of the page. You had 20 days already. The Tiyalda Beit Tzarat, and then you became a Mitzorah. Then Migaleach Tzarata. You have to shave your head for, you got it? You have to shave your head after your tzara. Then you have to wait 30 days to be a Nazir. You need those 30 days in order to grow your hair, in order to count as a Nazir. So that's the case. So basically, according to Chisda now, there are 3 cases in our Mishnah, at least 3 cases, right? Charlie, I think you're making some noise. Let me just review the 3 cases in the Mishnah because it's going to help go for tomorrow a lot because it gets much more complicated. The 3 cases in our Mishnah are whether or not Tum'ah cancels your whole Nazirut, right? You say, I want to be a Nazir for 50 days. And then you did 30 days of that. And then let's say 100 days. You did 50 days of that. You have 50 days left. You become Tameh mate. You have to cancel your whole Nazirut and do 100 days over again. Okay. Tameh in a way that's not Tumat mate, right? Meaning it's not the serious Tumat mate, or Tzarat, or Zav. Then you don't, not Razav. Then you don't cancel your Tumah. But according to Rav Chisda, as long as there's more than 30 days left behind at the end of your Tahara, you can count the days that you are Tameh towards your Tahara. If there are less than 30 days, you can't. You got to count 30 days minimum. And if you actually shave your head because you're a Mitzora, right, that's who shaves their head, then you have 30 days of Gidul Se'ar, no matter how many days you have left behind. So even if there are only 10 days left, you got to wait 30 days because your hair always has to grow 30 days before you become a Nazir who becomes Tahar. So you need all these qualifications. You need at least 30 days of Nazirut Tahara. You need at least 30 days of hair growth. But as long as you meet those qualifications, Rav Chisda is of the opinion that you can count the days when you're Tameh as part of your Nazirut, as long as it's not the major Tumat Mate. Now, I'm going to read the next line, but I'm not going to go too far because it actually doesn't stop for a long, long time, right? So I'll introduce it. I think you're really going to do a lot of it tomorrow. The next question comes from the following Mishnah, which we're going to have, I think, tomorrow. No, next parak, sorry. Well, it's a combination of tomorrow and the next parak. But the Mishnah and the Breita goes through these very complicated cases of, it's really next parak, where you have a Nazir who's also a Mitzora, right? Which gets very complicated because a Mitzora has to cut their hair. A Nazir has to cut their hair. You'd have to figure out who you're cutting your hair for which one. So we have this case. I'll read some of it. I'll decide where to stop. Ask the questions from the following Breita. The Breita has a case where you have a Nazir, on the bottom line, Nazir Shahaya Tameh B'Safek. A Nazir is Tameh B'Safek, right? The person said, I want to be a Nazir. We're going to see actually next parak. And then they went into a room, and then they left the room, and then someone went into the room and saw that there was a dead body in the room. And they were unsure whether the Nazir was in the room when the dead body was there. So it's a suffix, right? We're going to see later what you do. Usually you have to try to be machmir, right? You pretend you're Tameh. You can't for sure be Tameh. Wait 30 days, you bring a carbon, you wait another 30 days, you bring another carbon, you make a condition, right? We have all these cases which we will discuss in the next week. But the problem with this Nazir is that he's also muchlat b'safek. He also is a safek sarat, right? So he is not sure if he's a mitzora. Now, of course, the question is, how in the world can you be not sure if you're a mitzora, right? Either you're a mitzora or you're not a mitzora. So what's the case of safek sarat? So there's a lot of different debate about how you could be a safek. One explanation, Tosas here has a very beautiful explanation, that in fact the safek is the sort of medical safek. It's where basically a kohen goes and sees 2 mitzoraim, right? Let's just say one, and the kohen says the mitzora is tameh, but then they don't know which one the kohen declared tameh, right? And then of course they come back a week later or 3 days later, and the wounds have healed in both of them. Right, so Cohen looks at 2. They maybe had the sort of fast Cohen, right? You'd walk by the Cohen, show him your nega. 2 people walk by. He says, number 1 is Tameh, number 2 is Tahar. Right? But then the next day they can't remember which one was number 1 and which one was number 2, and they both have healed. So each one is a suffix. So the Breita says, I'm just going to read the top line, and then I'm actually going to stop. The top 2 lines. The top line says on Daf Nun Vav Amud Aleph, Ochel b'kadshim la'achar shishim yom, right? That this person can eat kachim after 60 days, Vishote yayin, and he can drink wine after 120 days. We're going to discuss this and unpack this a lot tomorrow. But basically, the idea behind this is that you can be confident that you're not tamei from a Nazir after 60 days. Because what you'd have to do, of Mitzorah, after 60 days, right? Because day one, you're suffix Nazir, tamei, right? So you said, I'm going to be a Nazir. You're not sure if you're tamei, you're not sure if you're tahar. You're suffix if you're a Mitzorah, you're not sure if you're have tzarat or don't have tzarat. And you're now perfect. So you can't just walk to the Beit HaMikdash and bring a karban for your tzarat and say this is a suffix, right? Because A, you might not be a tzarat, mitzorah, but B, you might be a Nazir. And if you're a Nazir, you can't cut your hair, right? So you have two problems. So basically what you end up doing is you wait 30 days, that might be your Nazirut or might not be your Nazirut. You bring a karban that might be a karban for Tumah or not, and maybe you make this condition that we made before. If I'm a Nazir Tameh, then this karban is for my Nazirut Tumah, and I accept a new Nazirut. If I'm a Nazir Tahar, this karban is for my Nazirut Tahara, and then I am going to bring a second one. Okay? And then after 30 days, basically, you can cut your hair, and because it might be your Nazirut Tumah. Then you do another 30 days, might be your Nazirut Tahara, and then you could become Tameh from your Tzarat, right? And then you basically start all over again, the same 30 days and 30 days, because now you're Tahar from your Tzarat. So that's you can eat Kudshim, which is what a Mitzorah can't do after 60 days, or you can be Tameh L'Meitim and drink wine after Nazir only after 120 days. I'm gonna stop here, but the reason we're asking this question is because we then discuss the difference between whether your Nazirut was a commitment for 30 days or your Nazirut was a commitment for a year, let's say, right? And that, of course, gets straight to the question of Rav Chisda. And again, what Rav Chisda said was that the only time that Mitzorah cancels or doesn't allow you to count your Nazirut is if you had a Nazirut Miruba. But if you did a Nazirut Mu'etet, a small Nazirut, meaning 30 days, then you could not count during that time. And if it was Miruba, you could count. We're going to see tomorrow from this very complicated case that keeps going on, a question to Rav Chisda. But I'm gonna stop here, tiny bit early, but we'll give Dov the space tomorrow to actually start the sugya, because it's, as I said, it goes the whole page, and finish this question of how you count your Nazirut when you're Tameh with Mitzorah. And of course, in this case, it's even more complicated because you're a Safek Tumah of Mitzorah. So we'll stop there, and I think Dov will pick it up tomorrow. So he may not hear, but I'll send it. So you are there, and God willing, we're getting really close to the end, so it's going to get more complicated before it gets. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining. Shavua Tov.
Yasher Koach.
Thank you.